Hello, I'm author Terry Crowdy. My new book, Formidable, Arthur Flint's War Against Tirpitz and the Kamikazes, tells the story of my grandfather's service on the aircraft carrier HMS Formidable during the Second World War. In this series, we're going to look at some of the photographs that appear in the book and delve a little deeper into the story behind them. This photograph is one of a pair of cushion covers kept by my grandfather as a wartime souvenir. The cushion displays the emblem of the US Naval Air Station in Brunswick, Maine. How did he come by it? We knew he'd been to America during the war. He spoke about New York and also mentioned a US naval base at Norfolk, Virginia. We just assumed he'd been in the United States with HMS Formidable. It was only when I started my detailed research I realised something appeared to be wrong with this. Formidable did go for repairs in the USA in 1941 after being badly damaged by two German Stuka dive bombers. It travelled directly from the Mediterranean via Suez, round the Cape and across the Atlantic. My grandfather would only have been 16 at the time. How had he ended up on a carrier at that age? At the start of this project, my parents wrote to the Royal Navy and asked for my grandfather's service records. This was delayed by the pandemic, and was further delayed when the service record was found to be barely completed. The Royal Navy very kindly reconstructed Arthur Flint's service history from their payment and victual records. I was at work when the records arrived. My mother read his various postings in chronological order, and it was only then that we understood he was attached to one of the Fleet Air Arms squadrons that served on Formidable from 1944 until the end of the war. In my head, I heard my grandfather's voice say I was with the pilots. I had not realised what he'd meant by that. Arthur Flint had not gone to America with Formidable. He was sent there to join the newly formed 1841 Naval Air Squadron in Brunswick, Maine. With one mystery solved, several others appeared. If he wasn't on Formidable, how did he get to the United States? We knew he arrived in Manhattan, but on what ship? And his service record had him in Boston for a few weeks. What was he doing there? With my grandfather no longer with us, it took a lot of research to find out. He often said he arrived at New York's Pier 92, the Manhattan passenger ship terminal. That was on the 9th of March 1944. He remained in America for 90 days, a little over 3 months. His service record did not stipulate which ship transported him across the Atlantic, but it would have been in one of the big passenger liners converted as troop transporters, probably the Aquitania. He arrived in America after a voyage of 5 or 6 days, far quicker than a normal merchant convoy. It must have been an incredible adventure for a 19-year-old lad from No. 1 Digby Road, Barking, Essex. From the austerity of wartime Britain and the rigours of basic training, Arthur found himself in a paradise of plentiful food and Coca-Cola. He found 1940s New York incredible. He said he and his mates walked around Manhattan, craning their necks, looking up at the skyscrapers. But I suspect his time in the Big Apple was not entirely incident-free. He warned me about the New York Police Department. They'll shoot anyone, he said. Well, at least we now know the origin of his cushion covers, and the first of his overseas adventures comes to an end. After 3 months, he was back on a warship, heading towards Liverpool and wartime Europe again. So thank you for listening. You can read about Formidable and Arthur Flint's war in the book, published in the UK by Pen and Sword Maritime, available now at all major stockists.